This video does not endorse, promote, or glorify any form of illegal or harmful activity. Hey guys, young Psychonaut here and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to talk about less is more and how I have learned this basically the hard way throughout my time doing substances. So today I'm going to talk about three things mainly. First of all, how I went from doing a lot to a little. Then we're going to consider why taking less is better. This will be very obvious to a lot of you, but there's probably going to be some things that you're not really thinking about. And then at the end we'll talk about why did I want to take so much in the first place? Like, what is the psychology behind basically going crazy on substances? Okay, so I used to be someone who took very high doses of substances. So before I was 18, when I was 16, I started smoking cannabis and I wasn't really interested in anything else until I was 18. And when I was 18, I got introduced to MDMA, ketamine, benzodiazepines, and that is also basically when my anxiety and depression really strongly hit. I had my first large friend group that I hung out with, and that just created so much social anxiety for me that basically I used the benzos mainly to kind of mitigate that. So we used to take, and I used to take, extremely high doses of these chemicals. For example, with benzos, like most people, if they take a milligram, 2 milligrams of some kind of Xanax, alprazolam type of substance like atizolame or clonazepam or whatever, most people would take a few milligrams. But we basically used to take 10, 15. Sometimes our whole stash was gone at the end of the night. We used to take so many benzos, even beyond the point where it would add any kind of new effect basically to what's going on. We just took them because they were there, because we were so inebriated, and because we just wanted to be out of it basically. Same with cannabis. We used to smoke grams of weed a day, waste so much money, but also just smoke so many blunts, so many joints. And the funny thing is, I really strongly remember from that period that every time we smoked weed, after an hour, 1.5 hours, we were already basically sober. This was because of a myriad of factors. It was because of the quality of our weed. We got it from the street instead of the coffee shop, so it was just less strong. But it was always also tolerance. It was also things just the fact that we smoked it instead of vaping it, etc. And so we used to burn through grams and grams, tens of grams a week, and extremely wasteful and also just not satisfying at all, because I always had the feeling that I was just not as stoned as I wanted to be, which is really annoying, right? If you're smoking grams of weed and then not really being stoned the way you want to be. Also with MDMA at that time, the MDMA pills in the Netherlands are so strong, 200 milligram plus, and that is not a marketing technique. That is the actual content of the pill. Some pills are even way stronger, up to 300-400 milligrams. So these are lethal doses of MDMA basically. If you don't really if you go into a club and you take 400 milligrams of MDMA, there is a real possibility you're going to overheat or get into exhaustion or whatever. So we used to take big amounts of MDMA, 180 milligrams, 200 milligrams, a one whole pill, and just be absolutely geeked, but not in a fun way. So geeked you're just gurning all the time, just so pressure almost on your limbs from wanting to move because of the stimulation, and just absolutely terrible sleep. Even if you took it in the morning and it was already the effects were gone, that night was just terrible sleep for me. And the next few days also I felt absolutely terrible. Same with ketamine. We used to get 2 grams of ketamine and then just do that in one night, which I know for a lot of you guys who do ketamine seems like a very normal thing, but trust me, it is a lot for your body, for your brain. Just because it's metabolized within half an hour doesn't mean that it isn't a lot to take a gram to the face in one night. And also the first few times I did DXM, I was just taking in quotation marks normal amounts, but I realized that it wasn't as fun as taking less. A few 100 milligrams of DXM is already, in my opinion, not adding much to my experience of the exam, but it is taking away a lot of things, or it's introducing a lot of annoyances. How does it compare to how I take substances nowadays? Well, first of all, there's a lot of substances I just simply do not take anymore, but that's for another time. The other thing is that I just don't take substances as frequently as I used to, and well, now we're getting into the amounts. If I decide to take a substance nowadays, it is very low amounts. And I found that these very low amounts actually give me so much more pleasure and fun and don't undermine my functioning as a human being. It doesn't undermine my relationships with other people like it used to be with other substances that I took a lot of. So for example, nowadays I would take like 30 to 50 milligram 2-FDCK, which is like a light to moderate dose if you look on Psychonaut wiki. Same with ketamine. Instead of taking a gram to the face, I take like 25 to 75 milligrams, not even 100 milligrams of ketamine. And I am blasted for the night. And same with DXM, like I think one DXM tablet of 30 milligrams, 2, maybe maximum of 3. So that's like 30 to 90 milligrams of DXM. It is so much more fun to me. Like you don't have the nausea. You don't have this heavy disassociation where you're just like confused. The music appreciation is so good on these doses. And just like the general feeling in my body is so warm and pleasurable and just very, very calm and nice. Instead of like higher dose of DXM, which often give me this kind of feeling of yeah, it's like insecurity, like almost like something is going to happen, or like there's just unrest in the body. And the same with cannabis. You would think, oh, he loves cannabis, he's probably like still like smoking grams and grams or like whatever, and that's just not the case. Like often I feel like just taking a few hits of the vape, or just like a few hits, or just a tiny piece of an edible, it gives me this way more satisfying high. And well, now because I'm not taking as much, it is also just way stronger. Like if you know anything about cannabis, you know that tolerance builds pretty quickly. But for me personally, tolerance also drops extremely quickly. So if I have like 2 full days at work or something, and like on the 3rd day I smoke some cannabis, I already have basically baseline tolerance. But this only works because I don't smoke too much. Because if I would smoke way too much on that 3rd day, that means that my tolerance would be way up again, and that would mean that I wouldn't probably be dropping back to baseline after a few days of like smoking almost nothing. So again, also with the other things, the reason why DXM is so fun for me on only like 50 milligrams is because I just don't do it as much. And if I do it, I do a very small amount. This basically doesn't trigger tolerance, or if it triggers tolerance, it is quickly reset, or it is quickly basically back to baseline. And another thing is that I just rather mix safe substances than take a very high dose of just one. I have found through my experimentation that a combination of a few safe substances, I have to say, don't combine things willy-nilly, really be sure that it is a safe combination. But if you combine small amounts of different substances that are safe to combine, it personally gives me way more control over the type of experience that I have. It gives you way, for example, I think DXM, cannabis is the perfect example for me personally, where this synergy is so strong and so good that I just have to take 1 or 2 DXM tablets, normal DXM tablets, and smoke some weed, and I am having so much better of an experience than if I would have done any of those in high amounts. Like if I would have just smoked a bunch of weed, I would just basically green out and fall asleep on the couch. If I only take DXM in high amounts, I'll be disassociated, annoyed, probably not having a good time. But if I take a small amount of weed and a small amount of DXM, that synergy for me perfectly works together. I'm not using as much weed, I'm not using as much DXM, I'm not wrecking my body as much on both, but I'm having much more of a fun time. Like much more. Like if DXM and weed was a 10, only weed or only DXM in high amounts to kind of like compensate would be like a 3 or a 4. It's really that big of a difference in how fun it is. Same with DXM and ketamine. I think taking a very, very, very small amount of DXM and then doing a little bit of ketamine, it just work so well together if done in small amounts and not like excessively. Same with psychedelics and, for example, ketamine. I think doing a very tiny amount of ketamine on psychedelics kind of elevates my trip a little bit without getting into like crazy territories where you're too inebriated to really do anything. For example, if you take a lot of ketamine, you can just like get lethargic. So yeah, think about tolerance. Think about like, if I'm taking less of something, I have to take less next time I do it because my tolerance just isn't as high. Think about health consequences. Like if I take less of something that's damaging to my body, of course it will be less damaging. So that is really something that I also found out is you can do substances and be healthy, but if you overdo it, if you're going to take 200 milligrams of MDMA, it will probably cost your serotonin system months and months to recover from that shit. But if you take like 80 milligrams of MDMA, it is probably so much less neurotoxic. It's so much less disruptive to the serotonin system, and you'll probably even have more fun on it. Then why wouldn't you do less? It just makes so much more sense. Also, think about costs. Like, okay, so nowadays I get, for example, 2 grams of ketamine and I can do with that like 4-5 months. I'm not kidding. This is not an exaggeration. I really still have like a gram of ketamine left from ketamine I got like 4 or 5 months ago. Just because I just take a tiny amount every time I do it instead of taking a whole gram to the face. Well, let's say this 2 gram cost me 50 euro. Then I can either have one night cost me 50 euro, or I can have 10 experiences spread out over 4 months for the same 50 euro. What sounds better to you? One evening and you pay 50 euro and you're not even having that much fun because you're so inebriated that you don't even remember it that much? Or have 10 fun experiences spread out over 4 months for the same price? I mean, if you're into economics in any kind of way, you should see that this is a much better deal, I would say. So now we're going to get into the psychology. Why did I take such high amounts? Why can I now have such more fun with lower amounts? Well, this goes back to why I took substances in the first place when I was younger. I wanted to escape. I had crazy anxiety. I had depression. I had like a really bad feeling in my body all the time. Mostly, by the way, from smoking nicotine and tobacco all day long. But I didn't connect those dots back in the day. But anyways, I felt like shit. I wanted to escape. I wanted to kind of like mediate my experience to kind of get rid of this negativity in my body or whatever, in my mind. So I took a gram of ketamine to the face. I took a bunch of benzos. I did a bunch of MDMA. And it never made me any happier. It never gave me any kind of positive outcome in my life or anything. But I did it because I kind of didn't want to feel like I felt. So nowadays, it is very simple. I love my life. Like every aspect of my life is amazing. So I simply do not want to escape anymore. There's like no reason, even like escaping now seems like a hassle. It seems like work. It seems like a risk that is just not worth it because everything is nice and amazing. And I'm not just saying that just because. Like, this is really how I think about my life. I'm just extremely, deeply grateful for everything that is happening. So I don't want to escape anything right now. So I can't even remember the last time I had a memory gap because of any kind of substance or a bad trip or even a bad experience in general. Simply because nowadays I just take a little, have my fun, alter my experience in an interesting way. So that is also mainly why I do substances now. It is to kind of have a little bit of a journey, a little bit of a novelty in your experiences. But it's not about escape. It's more about enjoying the moment more. So instead of like getting away from the moment by taking huge amounts of substances, now I'm just augmenting the moment a little bit just to make it a little different, you know, to kind of like break up kind of the routine of daily life. Not that I'm annoyed by the routine of daily life, but it is a routine. So it is fun to sometimes take a little bit of ketamine, take a little bit of shrooms, or whatever, just to get a little bit out there, I would say, with your mind basically. So back in the day, we just wanted to get as fucked as possible to get rid of certain anxieties. So if you're like that, taking a bunch of drugs that you know are very harmful, just taking a bunch of, like, way too much actually to really enjoy it, you're always strung out, you're always just like getting unconscious from benzos or whatever, ask yourself, like, why am I taking so much? Like, there has to be a reason, because if you look around, like, most people that have like good mental health, they don't seem to really be drawn towards taking so many substances. Even if somebody like drinks alcohol every day, if they just drink a glass of alcohol, that is so radically different than actually like drinking yourself unconscious every day. It's such a radical difference in like, why is this person doing it? Like, one glass of wine, you could see that as just having some fun or having a little, you know, a little relaxation at the end of the day. But if you're drinking yourself unconscious every day, there's probably something else going on. I urge you to really like examine your habits of what are you taking, why are you taking it, how much are you taking, and could you have like more fun by doing less? You can also just experiment. Just if you are used to taking like hundreds of milligrams of ketamine, just do 50. And also, if you do this kinds of experiments, wait at least until your tolerance is fully reset, so you can really see the effects of having low tolerance with just a very small amount of the substance. And also, the thing is, I can literally observe this around me and my friends that also take substances. When they're having a rough time, like they just lost their job, or they're going through a breakup, or, you know, anything that's kind of shakes up their life, I always observe them taking more substances at a higher frequency, and simply they're taking higher doses. Why? Because they're trying to escape. Of course, this is not the only reason, this is not the only thing that can happen, but it is one of the main factors, I think, why I used to do this, why a lot of people do this, is just because they're not really looking for fun in the moment, they're trying to get out of the moment. Okay guys, so yeah, I think this video hopefully really gave you some pointers to maybe why you're doing certain things and how you can have more fun, spend less, have better health, better tolerance, etc, etc. So the conclusion of this video is often less is more, especially with substances. You can have so much more fun by doing a little less and just enjoying it way more. Okay guys, I hope you really liked this video. You learned something. I hope this has a positive impact on your life, and I'll see you in the next one.